Geopolitical tensions between the United States and Iran are currently locked at a high-pressure threshold over nuclear enrichment. For the president, the situation creates a difficult political calculation. He is pursuing a legacy-defining foreign policy success, but must achieve it without triggering a prolonged war that would be deeply unpopular with his base. Iran's primary leverage remains its proximity to the Strait of Hormuz. Despite a degraded economy and a military that has taken significant hits, they retain the ability to disrupt this critical global shipping lane at will. One proposed resolution, often called the less bad scenario, involves a quiet diplomatic retreat. The U.S. would soften its nuclear demands in exchange for Iran charging a transit toll through the strait, which Tehran would use to fund its war-ravaged infrastructure. This compromise provides Iran with an essential economic lifeline and allows the U.S. an exit strategy, but it carries a heavy cost. It effectively grants a revolutionary regime the power to tax and control a primary global trade route. There is, however, an aggressive military alternative, a plan to physically seize control of Iran's ability to export oil. The target is Karg Island, a small landmass responsible for 90% of all Iranian oil exports. Tactical assessments suggest that roughly 12,000 to 15,000 U.S. troops could occupy the island, completely cutting off the Iranian government's main source of revenue. But the domestic consequences for Americans would be immediate. Removing that oil from the market would cause global prices to spike, resulting in gas prices well over $7 a gallon, and triggering broad inflation across the entire U.S. economy. This trap illustrates the limits of modern power. The U.S. must either concede to an adversary or inflict severe economic damage on itself, proving that military force can no longer easily solve economic conflicts. The unpredictable nature of current U.S. foreign policy has forced Middle Eastern nations to accept a new reality. They can no longer rely on a permanent American security umbrella. In response, independent power blocs are forming. The UAE and Israel are leveraging their recent diplomatic accords to build a regional alliance with India focused on shared technology and national security. Simultaneously, a newly public defense alliance has emerged between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, synchronizing their military operations. The danger is escalation. Pakistan is a nuclear power and could provide those nuclear weapons to Saudi Arabia if the kingdom's security were truly threatened. The region has fractured into a web of independent nations, each preparing for a future where American influence is no longer the defining factor in their survival. To fund this independence, these countries are executing large-scale domestic transformations. Saudi Arabia and the UAE are pouring capital into projects designed to attract global investment and build modern economies that exist far beyond oil. In Saudi Arabia, the government is integrating millions of women into the workforce, an area of the economy that was previously closed off. This shift serves as a powerful engine for new regional economic growth. Further complicating the landscape is a third bloc, Turkey and Egypt. These nations are using their large populations to demand a security architecture that operates entirely independently of Western influence. As the United States takes a less active leadership role, these regional players are successfully building economic and military firewalls that function without Washington's approval. The fallout from the Persian Gulf doesn't remain regional. Instead, it creates strategic vacuums that are being filled by American adversaries on the global stage. Russia is a primary beneficiary. Higher global prices for oil and fertilizer provide the Kremlin with the cash flow necessary to sustain its war economy and bypass the effects of Western sanctions. There is also a direct military cost. U.S. weapons and resources originally intended for Ukraine are being diverted to the Middle East, making it increasingly difficult for Kyiv to defend its cities. China is also finding an advantage. While Western powers exhaust their military and political capital in the Middle East, Beijing is free to consolidate its state-controlled economic dominance. This instability accelerates a shift in global power, strengthening the position of Eastern autocracies. The region with the most to lose is an exposed and economically stagnant Europe. For decades, European nations underinvested in their own defense, operating on the assumption that the world would remain peaceful and that the U.S. would always be there to provide security. That calculation has left them vulnerable. Today, the EU struggles to align 27 different national interests against more streamlined, autocratic mega-economies like China. The shift is so pronounced that even close U.S. allies like the UK and France are now huddling together to form independent defense pacts, realizing the era of reliable American protection has reached a turning point. The standoff with Iran signals a broader shift in global power. As regional players and Eastern autocracies dictate their own terms, the era of a single nation calling the shots is effectively coming to an end.